Thank you very much for giving us the opportunity to talk to you. Just a few days ago, there was a case that was at Rotonro where you reported a Dr. Mhlang. Just take us through from the beginning, what really happened?
Okay, I think for you to understand better, it's safer for me to explain the whole process from where it began.
Yeah.
So I was just talking to another lady doctor of mine when I was telling her my intention to donate to a couple who was struggling. So she referred me to Dr. Mhlanga. That was last year in November. So 25 November, I went to his surgery, and that's how we met initially. Nothing was amiss then. That very day, he also did the HIV test as well as the internal scan. So what stood out to me between the first and the second time was the differences between the scan, because he did pretty much the same thing, but now there was all of this misbehavior that was going on. So on the 14th of March this year, I went to his surgery, and he did explain to me that we are now in a process where we want to start doing the injections for me to start ovulating so we can harvest the eggs. So during this day, I went around 1 o'clock, and when I met him, he decided to do the HIV test again, and he also recommended that we do the internal scan. So during that process, he asked me to go and empty my bladder. And I went, and he directed me to the examination room, where he asked me to remove my clothes and get the gown you're supposed to wear. So he said he was going to be back in 2 minutes. I'm like, okay, no, that's fine. So I go in the room, I remove my clothing, but I only leave my bra, because I didn't think, he'd want to do anything up there. So I got on the bed, and I waited for him to come through. And when he came, he then asked me, he put on his gloves, and he asked me to open my legs in a butterfly position, which would be normal. Of course, he needed to do an external examination. So he came through, he does the external examination, and it was still normal to me, because it's the same thing he did the first time. So he inserted his 2 fingers and he was pressing onto my abdomen, which would still be normal. But then afterwards, he removed his fingers, and then he started rubbing onto my clitoris. So at this point, it was something new from the first time he did it. So I asked him, like, how does this help with the procedure this time around? And he just says, I need to check for discharge. So at this point, I really didn't understand, to say, is this part of the scope of your business, or it's something else? So at this point, I kept quiet. And then when he stopped rubbing on my clitoris, he continued to put his fingers in my vagina, going back and forth. So at this point, I knew it wasn't normal. But for me to run or to try and veer him off, how was I supposed to do it in a vulnerable position like that? I wasn't wearing anything. If I were to run, where would I go? And I think there was one nurse at the reception, and there was no one else. So at this point, I was just like, okay, when you're in a hostage situation, you're always told to comply with what the person is saying. So a couple of moments later, he continues, and then he tells me to get off the bed. I get off the bed, and he tells me to bend over, facing the bed. So I comply, and then he continues to put his fingers in my vagina, going back and forth. So I also asked for the second time, I'm like, but now, you see, we are off the bed, and we are continuing to do, how is it helping? And then he's like, I'm supposed to check discharge. But what I didn't understand is, what discharge did he want to check? Because I had discharge already, even from the first time he put his fingers while pressing onto my abdomen. So I just found it quite odd, because he was now breathing heavily, and then he was asking me, what's on your mind? So for me, yes, he was asking, what's on your mind? So for me, it was really odd. And then I just answered, and I said, I have a couple of viewings to do at work tomorrow. So I just left it at that. And then when he was done, he told me to get back on the bed. He takes the scanning equipment. He does the internal scan as it's supposed to be done. And when I was done, I got off the bed. And at this point, I was rushing to get dressed. I got my clothes from the chair that was right beside the bed. And he was like, when I was bent over, before he told me to get back on the bed, he removed my bra.
Mm-hmm.
And when he was done with the scan, and I was getting dressed, he's like, so have you ever had a breast examination? I'm like, no, I haven't. So he came from behind me and he started fondling my breasts. And at this point, I knew it was a normal, because who does a breast examination from behind? It was quite odd for me. And I could tell, with the heavy breathing, that it was getting somewhere. So I eventually then just kind of shove him off. And he started to fold the sheet that I was covering myself with while he was doing the examination. And he said, I'll help you get dressed when you're done. So this was another red flag for me to say, what doctor has ever helped a patient to get dressed? Usually when they are done with the scan, they leave the room and they give you a chance to get dressed. Yeah. And so I just found it very weird that he was asking to help me get dressed. So when he was done folding the sheet, he tugged at my underwear before he left the room. Yeah. So when he left, I just got dressed and I went to his office. He gave the couple a call to organize the dates where, they'll start injecting me and get ready for her to then ovulate, so that when they harvest the eggs, she's also fertile during that period. So when we were done coordinating that whole thing, he then asked me, like, so what are you doing after this? And I just told him I'm going to the office. So at this point, I just wanted to leave. And as I was leaving, so as I was leaving, he grabbed onto my hand in an attempt to kiss me. And then I just veered him off and I left immediately. So I remember there was another lady who was coming in as I was leaving. So I just bid farewell to the nurse that was at the reception. And the first thing I did was to call my colleague. And it so happened that I recorded that call as well. So I called him to tell him what had happened. And it was an ordeal. So I just drove to Longchen Plaza and I just took some time to write a recollection of what had happened and all the details as they happened. So I have all of the information of the situation as I explained it right after it happened. So the next day I went to see my doctor at Parktown Hospital. And so I wanted him to check me out because when I got home, I was just inflamed and I was feeling a lot of pain. And he suggested that I go to Harare Hospital at the victim-friendly unit. So when I went there, the doctor did an examination and they did write my report. I have it all on record. So they also realized that my clitoris was inflamed and I had a posterior forehead bruise. So to me, it was something because who has bruises when they go for an examination? That's not something that you usually experience, especially comparing from the first scan to the second scan. I never experienced something like that. So for me then to have to try and prove to say this happened is, I'm just hoping that other people get to speak up if something like that happened to them.
Yeah. You said you went to see your doctor at Parktown. Mm-hmm. Obviously, you also explained to the doctor what had transpired the day before.
Yes.
Besides just telling you to go to the victim friend, from what you had told the doctor, what did he say? It
was quite odd. Of course, as a doctor, not as a doctor, but as a third party, you have to be neutral to say, okay, I cannot just believe that someone can say something like this happened. But on the other hand, that's not how a medical examination is supposed to go. So to him, it was actually weird to say, why, for one, why would a doctor be doing an internal examination to a female patient without a nurse present? That was one of the concerns. And then two, why would you get to a point where someone is feeling pain? I know some examinations are painful, like a pap smear, of course, but it's not something that leaves you bruised. And they even checked my blood pressure, and it was through the roof. Like, so if I was, I don't know how to explain, to say, if it was a normal examination, why would my body react in that way? To say, I've got blood pressure, I couldn't function. I fell into non-functional depression for the whole week after this incident happened, and I couldn't go to work and things like that, because it really affected me. I mean, if it was something that could have been explained to me, to say, no, this is how medical examinations work, 1, 2, 3. If you felt uncomfortable, then I do really apologize, but this is how things are done. So I even checked on the internet to say, how do doctors check for discharge? And I realized that they insert a swab, and they take that sample and they go and examine it. But he didn't do any of that. It was just him busy with his fingers, and there was no discharge that was collected to go and check for the infection. So I don't understand his basis to say he was checking for infection when no tests were done to the discharge, if he even collected it. Well, he didn't, but yeah, that's just the position.
I just want to take you a little bit back. When you first met him before the examination, what kind of a doctor, how did he relate with his patients?
Well, he was, I'd say, overly friendly. I remember when I got there, he was asking me, well, it was pertinent to the examination that he knows the last time I had been intimate with someone. Well, that had to be shared. I did share with him. But he went on to start asking me, so what positions were you using? And he was telling me information about how he helps his other clients with their sexual matters and things like that, which I felt like was quite uncomfortable for him to be sharing that kind of information with me.
Now to the victim friendly, how did they assist you?
Okay, so when I went to the victim friendly unit, they were very accommodating, and they also offered me counseling. So I did go for a few counseling sessions after the incident happened, and yeah, they just told me they were behind me. Of course, they're supposed to make you feel welcome, and yeah, that's what they did.
So after that, when then did you start communicating back to Dr. Mhlanga to raise your concern?
So it happened on the 14th of March. On the 15th of March, I went to Harare Hospital, and I also communicated with him to say, so when you were doing ABC, what was the reason for you doing that? This was on the 15th of March. And he was just answering, he wasn't quite straightforward with his answers. But I remember on the 16th of March, I then wrote a letter to the Medical and Dental Doctors Council to lodge a complaint. So after he received that letter, he then began calling me, asking to talk to me. So when I asked, what do you want to talk about? He just never set the agenda of this meeting he wanted to have with me. So I just didn't feel comfortable seeing him again, so I never did.
And what was the response from the letter that you wrote, besides him communicating with you?
Well, he was just asking to see me, and he was
saying...
No,
I'm saying you wrote to the Doctors' Council complaining. What was their response to...
Oh, the Doctors' Council, they have not responded yet. So the thing is, yes, the only thing they did was to tell me that they acknowledge the receipt
Okay.
of my complaint. But I did make some follow-ups following to the police report I made, but they haven't responded yet. They just say we are still conducting investigations, and it's been 3 months now. So the main thing was I was going to make a police report as soon as I got the response from the Doctors' Council. But seeing as it's been 3 months and nothing has been done yet, so I just felt like if I make the police report, maybe it will push them to expedite the process.
And you've done that now?
Yes, I did make the police report last week.
Okay. I understand when you made the police report and when Dr. Mhlanga appeared in court, one or two ladies also got in touch with you and share their experience. What are they say?
Well, one of the ladies has let me know that she is willing to testify, but only on the condition that she remains anonymous. Yes. So it is also known to me that she has received a call from people who are in contact with Dr. Mhlanga for her to remain quiet. So I'm assuming that maybe a couple of other ladies have also been silenced. So it is something that we're just working on to say we will try and protect everyone who comes forward and tries to speak out. But should they not want to, I think my case remains solid. This is my truth. I really don't need somebody else to come and, verify my case to say it's true or it's not, because I also have compelling evidence surrounding the things that happened. So the other girl, I wouldn't really say she was abused because she says it was consensual. So for her they were intimate. So, but for her to come and say, I want to testify and stand trial, she said she cannot because it's something she agreed to do. So I'm also realizing that it's something that's, it's a regular thing that's going on with him. It seems like he's a repeat offender, and a lot of girls don't really have the strength or the courage to speak out.
I also understand that when he also received the letter from the Doctors' Council, and as you've said, he tried to call you. From the chats and the conversation, did he look like he wanted to apologize? What is it from your understanding? Did he really want it to do?
From my understanding, I think he just wanted to pay me off, to be quite honest with you, because the way he was saying it was as if to say, come and let's talk, and in talking terms to him was, I'll pay you for this whole thing to just go away. So for me, it wasn't something that was okay. I could have even gone the civil route because I also lost out on a lot of things while I couldn't work when this whole incident happened. But for me, it wasn't about getting money. I just want justice, Yeah.
And probably people would ask one or two questions. How did you get to know about Dr. Mhlanga? Because some might say you might have had some previous issues, and now you've got a chance to revenge, to send him to jail.
Okay.
Yeah.
So as I've explained earlier, I was referred to him by a female doctor I was talking to when I told her I was considering donating. So I have no relationship with him besides this whole donating thing. I've seen people comment on the articles that have been written recently to say, oh, he's a nice person, would never do something like that. But to me, I don't dispute that he has done great things for people. Dr. Mhlanga has helped a lot of couples have children, but that does not discount the fact that he's a sexual predator. If something does something wrong, then they have done something wrong. But we don't dispute that he has done a lot of good things in his life. So all I want is for him to be held accountable for his actions.